Natalie Hawkins. I'm the president of the Moore County Economic Development Partnership, and I proudly serve on your NCEDA Board of Directors. And I'm super excited to MC today's webinar, Remote Worker Training, an Economic Boost for Rural North Carolina. And we are certainly happy to have all of you with us today. Before we start the program, I do want to acknowledge the NCEDA's annual sponsors, and those sponsor logos are going to be on the screen right now for you. These companies and organizations really support every component of NCEDA's expansive mission and growing body of programs, and we want to thank them for their generous support, which makes webinars like today's possible. Today, we are excited to dive into NC State's Extension's Remote Worker Training Initiative, which is part of their digital skills education program. And that's designed to help individuals thrive in a growing remote job market. And throughout today's session, you're going to learn about key areas of the program, including digital literacy, effective virtual teamwork, and strategies for remote job searching. By enhancing digital skills and broadband utilization, this initiative is going to play a crucial role in supporting rural economic development, job growth, and local business success. It's also helping to retain talent locally and attract new residents seeking career opportunities while enjoying a rural lifestyle. I'm eager to hear from our speakers on this program and how it can strengthen our rural economies and drive economic resilience. And as Liz mentioned, just to note, we're going to have time for questions at the end. So please be sure to type those in the Q&A box. Again, not the chat box, but the Q&A box, and we'll address all of those after the presentation, okay? So now let's get to our speakers. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Kenny Sheeran and Tom White. Kenny is a Union County native and earned degrees in natural resources and forestry from NC State University, followed by a Master of Divinity from Campbell University, and a PhD in rural sociology from the University of Missouri. After holding leadership roles in community development, he returned to North Carolina in 2019 as the Randolph County Extension Director and later as Broadband Access and Education Coordinator. He now serves as NC State's Extension's Community and Economic Development Program Manager, overseeing broadband and other development initiatives. Tom White leads the economic development initiatives at NC State, and he serves as the local liaison to local, regional, and state and economic and workforce development organizations. His work, of course, long-standing work here in North Carolina has fostered job creation, capital investment, and opportunities for both students and faculty. Previously, Tom was director of the North Carolina Department of Commerce's Division of Employment and Training, and also CEO of the Greater Durham Chamber of Commerce. A Duke University graduate, he also holds a Master of Public Affairs from NC State. So again, thank you everyone for being with us today, and I'm going to turn things over to Kenny, and Tom will follow him.
Good morning. Let me share my screen. Let me take a second to do that. And now I will go to presentation mode here. There we go. All right. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come and share with you this morning. I'm excited about this topic that we're talking about. To try to put it in context of just the economic benefits of high-speed broadband utilization in rural counties and really everywhere. It doesn't have to be rural, but I wanted to focus a little bit more on rural North Carolina. As Natalie said, I'm a native of North Carolina, grew up in Union County, which is not so much rural anymore, but I did grow up on a farm there. So there was some farming going on when I was growing up there, and just have a love for the rural parts of North Carolina extensively. But today I want to talk a little bit more about remote work. And when I say remote work, it's synonymous with some of these names. The remote work from home, hybrid work, telecommuting, telework, work from anywhere, you know what I'm talking about. But when I say remote work, I mean all these things or a combination of those things in remote work. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about who we are. NC State Extension, North Carolina Cooperative Extension, we're everywhere you are. There is an office in every county, plus an office in the eastern band of Cherokee. So there's 101 local extension centers across North Carolina. And like I said, we are where you are in every county. So um, check those county offices out if you have time. But I want to talk to you a little bit more in depth about the digital skills education program that we've started with North Carolina Cooperative Extension. It's a community and rural development program. And our vision simply is that in North Carolina, every individual on a farm, in a household, in business will have the digital skills necessary to earn, learn, be well, and live well. Um, we truly believe that we can get that accomplished. We are doing this work that we're with the digital skills educators in these counties right now. It's all thanks to a grant by the North Carolina Digital Information Technology Division in North Carolina government. The Office of Digital Equity and Literacy provided a grant to hire digital skills educators throughout these counties in North Carolina, with the exception of one. I have to brag on Randolph County. Randolph County saw the importance of digital skills education and they put their position directly into their county budget. So, other counties out there, you can help advocate for these types of positions because I think after this presentation, you'll see the benefit of doing this type of work in North Carolina. We are busy all the time. I had a meeting with our educators yesterday, and they are just doing some outstanding work across North Carolina. And it's an area of extension that um, we're best known for cows and plows, right? I mean, we're ag centric organization, but we have to be relevant into the 21st century. So this digital skills education, helping the society transition to digital platforms that are coming out all the time, AI, all those things we cover in digital skills education in these county offices. So, well, if you want to hear more about that type of program, we can do another uh, webinar. But today I want to talk more about remote work. The remote work and hybrid work, I mean, it has the ability and does impact rural counties and rural places. There's studies that show the when broadband is utilized at a higher rate, it does bring economic advantages to rural counties. Those improved internet access benefits the residents, not only residents but businesses and overall the rural economy. And just think about how many local shops, main street shops, can also access markets outside of their main street just by advertising on Facebook Marketplace or Etsy or any of those types of platforms, and all that's made possible through the use of high-speed internet. Um, what's the role of the infrastructure? Before you start doing things on the internet, you have to have the connectivity. Um, so that reliable broadband connection is essential for this type of work. There are still significant uh, gaps in coverage in North Carolina, but that's coming to an end. Not as quickly as some would hope, but it is coming to an end. The North Carolina Broadband Infrastructure Office has multiple grant programs. And we are very fortunate in North Carolina to have such advanced thinking on broadband infrastructure. They started working on broadband infrastructure way before the BEAD program. came out. And actually, the BEAD program dollars have not even funneled out into North Carolina for broadband infrastructure yet. We've been working off of COVID relief money in North Carolina for broadband expansion, and we're still going that direction. So if you're not connected yet in your rural county, you will be. A little advertisement um, for the broadband infrastructure office. Um, rural areas with broadband can attract high income remote workers, right? So the connectivity and the availability of jobs sort of dictate that. Statistics show in the Triangle Business Journal article in July 24, they named Franklin County, North Carolina, as the state's highest percentage of remote workers. I thought that was fascinating, and I just what made that so? And I don't know. You'd have to talk to Alyssa or Greg up there to figure out who how why that is. But that's fascinating to me that Franklin County is highest North Carolina county with remote workers. So um, remote work can be a catalyst, and I'm not saying that remote work is a panacea. It's not something that's going to create and solve all economic development problems in rural areas. It can be one tool in your toolbox, and that's what I'm promoting with this. And that remote work can be that one more extra tool that you can put in your toolbox to promote economic development in rural places. Um, so on Indeed, I just typed in remote jobs. There's 1,000 plus. Indeed also has a um, designation of hybrid jobs, and there's over 2,000 of those in North Carolina on Indeed. When I put this slide together, it's probably about the same. LinkedIn, I did the same thing. Uh, and you see the numbers there. So there are opportunities in North Carolina to promote remote work and to bring those workers in. And one thing I want to make a distinct part about this is there's two sides to the remote work strategy. Um, you can recruit new residents to come and take a job in and live in your town, um, or you can train existing residents to be able to take those remote jobs. And so there's two sides of this coin when we talk about remote workers, and I think both would benefit a rural community. Resident recruitment is something that you might want to do if you have available housing, which I know that's an issue in a lot of places. But also you can and help point your current residents to training resources, and that's we're offering that, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. Um, it improves the quality of life in rural residents. You don't have to spend so much time commuting. You less time having to manage those kids' appointments, your child's appointments to the doctor, and can I stay at home for half a day to, or you could just work from home that day and take your kids to the doctor, or it is increases your flexibility in your career and you tend to stay around a little bit longer with career retention within communities because you have that flexibility and it's easier to do that. Something that some of these slides are coming from a study that Tom will talk about here in a minute. Jason Jolly and Brent Lane, they found that you're willing to commute further um, when you don't have to commute that far every day of the week. So a way to look at that is a term called your job shed. So this is in their study, they looked at a job in Hertford County, North Carolina. If you're if you're working full time in an office somewhere and you have to go to that office every day of the week, then you're not willing to travel as far to that job. But if you are only working 1 or 2 days a week in the office, you might be willing to drive a little further. So you look at the number of jobs available versus a 30-minute commute versus a 60-minute commute from the same location. So that tells you a little bit about your jobs available if you're able to do a hybrid job in a rural community. And think about the benefits of that community with keeping that professional there. They're not grocery shopping where they work. They're not running into the stores on lunch break. Instead, they're shopping in your downtowns. They're shopping in your local stores if they're at home more often. This is a fascinating image. So this is an image of North Carolina, sort of cropped a little bit. Um, I'm not purposely living out the mountains or the coast, the tips of North Carolina. It's just how the best way I could show the representation. But this is a percentage of workers that work from home. And the darker shaded areas are the higher percentages. And look where those percentages are. Why you look at this and you say, why is that? Because I mean, these places are the places where the most jobs are. It's the urban areas, the urban counties in North Carolina, the 85 belt there, Raleigh and through Greensboro, then down to Charlotte, the Crescent there. Then you have around Wilmington and Asheville out in the mountains, that area. But look at this next slide. Well, here we go. Hitting the wrong button. The next slide shows the percentage of households with broadband subscriptions. Well, those darker shades are look a lot like where those percentage of remote workers are. So what's this tell you? One, when this study was done, it goes out to 2001 from the American Community Survey, is either the option of connecting was not there, or people just didn't see the need to connect to the internet and didn't take the service. So where you have the largest percentage of remote workers is where you have the largest percentage of families or households connecting to the internet. So that sort of as a correlation there. You'd have to dive into more of the causations there, but I thought it was interesting that those two maps look very similar, but they're displaying something totally different besides the different colors. So, what are the challenges and considerations of what's going on here? The broadband readiness is critical. That you have to have that connection to support remote work. Um, uh, the North Carolina Broadband Infrastructure Office is working hard to get us that connectivity into rural areas. Um, if you're going to recruit workers to rural communities for remote work, you have to have options for them to where they can live, and also you have to provide some digital skills training to workers, potential workers that already live in your community, and help them skill up and be able to be qualified for those jobs and assisting uh, current residents with those skills and recruiting those residents that are already working remotely are two strategies that you could work on in rural communities to boost your economic output in those rural communities. Um, Recommendations. We don't have to worry about the top one there. We've got huge investments in broadband infrastructure. We're closing that gap between who's connected and who's not connected. We got to promote digital skills and create that ecosystem of supporting remote workers. In that same article, um, there was the Triangle Business Journal did. There was, I think it was Natalie. I think it was in your county. The the co-worker space that you had in that area. And then there's remote work certification with NC State University. And I'll talk about that, what that looks like here in just a second. And then help connect companies to with the program of that remote worker training. And that's really where I could see our partnership with Extension and the North Carolina Economic Development Association helping build that ecosystem of helping workers find jobs. You know the companies in your counties, you know the industry in your counties, you know what industries might would hire remote workers. So helping us build that ecosystem and that process of connectivity will be very helpful for your counties and us as we implement this program. So what is remote worker certification? It's a course that we're going to be offering through the digital skills educators that are throughout North Carolina, where it's a combination of planning out your workday, your communication strategies, critical thinking, workflow. You use software tools that teamwork help um, track projects and project management, uh, time management. It does a very comprehensive job of introducing and helping people practice. And so what you do is you get into a cohort and you pretend like you work together and you go through all these exercises that help you um, learn to be a remote worker. And it's very effective. And then on the back end of that, there's some modules on finding that virtual career. So this would be if someone's looking to do remote work, there's some help finding a virtual career and then that remote job development and making sure that you're promoting yourself as a remote worker. So it's a very effective program. We're looking forward to rolling that out. So in summary, we're trying to make this happen in North Carolina. In general, I will speed through these next slides here more about our digital skills education program. We While we do this, 92% of jobs across the nation found out that 91% of jobs in North Carolina actually require at least one type of digital skill. So that's why we're doing digital skills education in cooperative extension. 1/3 of the people in the workforce do not have uh, the skills they need to take those digital skills required jobs. So we want to change that metric. We want to change that statistic. We want everyone to be able not to be limited for taking a job because they don't have the digital skills they need. So we're looking to change that. If you look at the entry level workers, um, there's jobs that don't require a lot of digital skills, but they do need some digital skills. And I'll be sharing these slides. If you look at just the economic impact, a medium average wage, this was done by the National Skills Coalition, these slides, and a job that requires no digital skills averages 17.62 an hour. You put one digital skill in that requirement, that jumps your salary up, and then it keeps climbing from there. So that shows you the impact of digital skills, and we want people to have those digital skills to bring more money into the economy. So this another 23% more with that one digital skill required. Um, and how does that translate into our communities? Um, if there's or people with digital skills are earning more, that means there's more money in our state and local economies. So that's a benefit to our economies if we want our workers to earn more so they can contribute more to our community. So that's the end of my part. If there's questions, please chat put those in the Q&A. We'll answer those, but I'm going to turn it over to Tom now, which he'll have more to share on the concept of this work.
Kenny, thank you very much. And also want to thank Liz and Torcia and Brandy for the opportunity today, as well as Natalie. Um, we used a couple of these slides back in April for a presentation to the North Carolina General Assembly Caucus on Economic Development and Foreign Direct Investment. And this is just an example of what happens when EDPNC calls us at NC State University, as well as our sister land grant, NCANT, in a recruitment project. This was originally used on the Volvo project 10 years ago. It was updated for a presentation to Toyota Mazda, and then again updated to show something that Kenny alluded to in the context of remote work. The juxtaposition of our subject matter experts along with career development center expertise are the 2 points of inflection traditionally for what EDPNC likes to have. People that can talk in detail about the industry cluster of the particular new and expanding industry prospect, but also how many graduates do we have and where do they live and how proximate are they to those, in this case, a mega site. And just mechanically, and Kenny alluded to this in talking about remote work from Jason Jolly and Brent Lane's study, you can look at shift share data that we're so fortunate. Jeff DeBellis, I think, is attending this. We impose upon him and his great team at the Department of Commerce, Labor and Economic Analysis Division to try to see what we can do in terms of the all-important workforce development supply of talent when we're competing against other states. I should mention that RW is remote work, but it's also rural works. Anna Mangum of our Industrial Extension Service is now in her 6th year of having about 150 student interns looking at Tier 1 and Tier 2 counties. A lot of what Kenny's described here is going to be very advantageous for our rural markets and our micropolitan areas. And you'll see that in the next slide, Kenny, if you can advance one slide. A couple of years ago, thanks to the aforementioned Institute for Emerging Issues, Sarah Langer Hall was able to do a pilot on workforce development. It was called the North Carolina Workforce Development Leadership Initiative. It was funded initially by Hillary Sherman of EDA, and it had remote work in its curriculum. It was a 60-hour class over a span of 6 months that was taught primarily at our McKimmon Center. And with that EDA support, Annie Izod and Ken Allen, I think Ken's on the call from NC Works, participated in that. Our municipal research lab is part of NC State's College of Humanities and Social Sciences and our School of Public and International Affairs. Workforce Development Board, Stephanie Dees played a huge role in putting that curriculum together. And we had 5 cohorts of 6 individuals from around the state. And remote work was one of the components. I dare say in the next iteration, which I think is going to happen in April, that'll probably be more focused for all the reasons that Kenny alluded to. And our continuing and lifelong education, which celebrated its 100th anniversary at NC State this past August. So we can stay tuned on that. The aspirational goal for this initiative is somewhat the short course on economic development, which is now in its 52nd year in over at our sister institution, UNC Chapel Hill at the School of Government. So, and the next slide, Kenny, when we go into some of Brent's research, we're indebted to Jason and Brent. Stephanie and I supervised a cohort of graduate students at the Duke School of Sanford School of Public Policy this past spring to look at remote work. And they studied Ohio, Texas, and Virginia vis-a-vis comparative data as to which assets and strengths do certain states have. Kenny alluded to and delineated the tremendous volume of assets. And, North Carolina is #1. So we want to maintain that strength. So we want to be attentive to any kinds of new phenomenon that you see out there in the labor market. And some of Jason and Brent's points, as we'll go into the next slide, Kenny, I think they brought that out. Kenny's already alluded to this, so I won't be too redundant, but remote work is the new normal, and it does favor our rural areas, and it has benefits, which Kenny's alluded to with the Hertford example in northeastern North Carolina. Sarah Bernhardt's on this call. And then the rural remote readiness. It's something that's good for society, too. It's going to connect us with educational institutions as well as economic and workforce development, which is what it's all about today. Next slide, Kenny. The rural dividend's been talked about, and yesterday we were with Patrick Woody at the North Carolina Rural Center, and this afternoon the Institute for Emerging Issues will have another, workshop on North Carolina. So it's important to have that infrastructure. You have to have it. It's just critically important to our mega sites to have the infrastructure for power, to have the infrastructure for surface transportation and all the other elements. Certainly access to workforce is most germane. And the livability, the quality of life in a lot of our markets speaks for itself. So it'll give us more. I think Kenny used an app metaphor about that toolkit again. It just gives us another tool in our toolkit to, and it increases the plethora of options that companies have when they're investigating new investment or the expansion of existing enterprise. Next slide, Kenny, please. This is probably overstated because it was actually developed last year, but certainly there's some threats to downtown office markets because of that. And it came out during a presentation. Brent made a presentation in person to the Working Group on Economic Development that Peter Koklanis runs over at UNC Chapel Hill. And Peter posed the question: does this set up an inherent conflict between high density markets like central business districts and downtowns vis-a-vis rural areas? But to some extent that already exists, but we want to do both and. So for if, when, and as appropriate, it certainly be a complement, not a surrogate for economic development strategies. Next slide, Ken. And then it favors that we already actually, this is redundant. It favors rural America for the plethora of assets and resources that we're so blessed to have in rural North Carolina. And it does reduce those geographic barriers as far as having those commuting patterns. And Brent pointed this out during his presentations, the fact that we have the largest share of rural residents in the top 10 states. So it's a competitive asset and strength for us here in North Carolina. Next slide, Ken. It also looks at those labor sheds. We're always getting asked, like, where are our students at NC State? Where do they live? Where do they go at post-graduation? What are they making? What are their degrees? And Mike Walden, our wonderful economist emeritus from North Carolina State University, 48 years of service. He used to actually have this little vignette about the fact that when he would have advisees among our undergraduate students when they were freshmen, regardless of where they came from, he would ask them what do they want to do after they get their degree. And inevitably, they would say that I would like to go back home and ply my trade now that I have a credential now to actually make money and earn money, maybe start an enterprise. That's happening more significantly and more frequently than it used to happen. He said by the time they're juniors, they say they want to stay here. They want to stay in Raleigh-Durham. And so he says, we want to actually think that remote work could expand those list of vocational occupational opportunities for our graduates and be more inclined to go back. And that's what Rural Works and Anna Mangum does with that summer internship program, which has been a colossal success. And that can be endorsed by, there's a lot of folks on this call that have used that program and helped market that statewide as that continues to grow and thrive. Next slide, Ken. This is another advantage, and Stephanie Dees, I think, can attest to this. Our students at Duke found this too, that remote workers accept those longer but less frequent commutes, and Kenny's alluded to that as well. And a lot of our students today, our young people, want to have that flexibility. We're seeing that across the board. And in North Carolina, in addition to the 58 community colleges, and I think Cecilia Holden's on this call right now, 2 million post-secondary credentials by 2030. You got 16 UNC system members, complemented by 36 North Carolina independent colleges and universities that Hope Williams takes such care of. So it'll enhance our strength and vitality of our labor shed, which is already awfully strong. Next slide, Ken. You already alluded to this, and I know Sarah's going to be looking at that. And then for our friends down in the Charlotte market, this is the same kind of juxtaposition of that expansion of labor sheds that Kenny alluded to in northeastern North Carolina, and our friend Patrick down at UNC Charlotte can relate to that. I think you got a new football coach from Ohio University, so we'll have to point that out to Brent and Jason. Next slide. And then the conclusion, and Kenny, I'll turn it back over to you because I think you've done a fantastic job of putting this together and offering a really very vital technical assistance service that we hope to grow and expand in the months and years ahead. And I'll turn it back to you, Ken.
Thank you, Tom. Very insightful. And there's going to be plenty of time for questions. We spread through the presentation because the real information sharing comes through questions and answers and conversation. So we just want rural areas, especially in North Carolina, to be able to utilize the investment and get a return on the investment that this broadband infrastructure is going to bring to your community. And broadband helps bridge those gaps and helps you build a vibrant, sustainable community. And we just want remote work to be a tool in your toolbox. Um, Sort of the more about how that program is going to work. We're going to roll out the information. We'll be sure to send it to folks on this call and through Liz and the North Carolina Economic Development Association when we are recruiting a cohort to go through that remote work training. And our digital skills educators across the state will be sort of leaders in that cohort and help people connect and help answer questions. And the thing about remote worker training is you don't have to live in the county one of these digital skills educators lives in. You will be able to access this training no matter where you live in North Carolina, because that's the whole nature of the program is being able to connect to work remotely and to do that. So anyway, we'll stop there, stop the share, and get back to questions and answers if folks have those.
Great. Well, Kenny and Tom, thank you so much for all of that great information about remote work. I learned a lot myself, and we do have a couple of questions from our attendees. And I'll start with the first one. Going back to this remote worker certification, it sounds like that's going to be a great, valuable resource for our employers here in North Carolina. Can you give us any idea of the timeline of when you might think about or planning to roll that program out?
Right. It should be coming out the first quarter of this new year. So I mean, if in a perfect world it'd be January, but it might not be January with the holidays coming up. All of our digital skills agents have trained now through the course. A requirement to be able to bring this into a state is that everyone that's going to coordinate the program has to go through the program. So you are thrown into the mix, and all those folks have done that. They just finished that up. Our last one's finished up in November. So we're going to meet with the provider. The provider is Utah State University Extension. They are the ones that have pilot developed this program across the nation, and then will be signed on as an affiliate to their program at NC State Extension. So that's how that's going to work, and we had to get the back channels of all that worked out these few weeks of December and January. So hopefully you'll be seeing something about this mid part of January.
And how long has Utah State been running that program?
Oh my, it's been I would say at least I'm being very conservative, at least 5 years, maybe even
Oh,
more.
wow.
So they've the thing about their program, the whole program is funded through the state legislature. They provide the funding in their state budget to run this program because Utah has seen the how important being able to cultivate these remote workers are to their economy. And it's a little bit different in Utah. There's lots of space and lots of wide open spaces out there. So having people to connect and do that is different. But as Tom mentioned in his stats there, North Carolina has the highest number of residents in rural areas of any state in the nation. So we have a huge potential of capitalizing on that same concept here in North Carolina as we roll this out and help workers get connected to those companies that do remote work or hybrid work.
I think it's encouraging to hear that the Utah program's been in place for several years. So hopefully they've
Mhm.
ironed all the bugs
Oh
out
yeah,
of it already, right ahead of us. We do have a
absolutely.
couple of other questions from our attendees that I want to pass along. Tom, this one is directed to you. It's the question is the data showing where the NC State alumni with specific degrees live in proximity to those areas where you showed that radius, I think, around Greensboro. Who matches up that data that you showed up on that map? So like kind of where does all that data and information come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Natalie, what it comes from, our North Carolina State Alumni Association has records of where our alumni live. and then where they work. And most of those individuals for that particular slide, those were engineering graduates that were in demand for those companies. So it was industrial and systems engineers, electrical and computer engineers, and mechanical and aerospace engineers. So if you cross tabulate where those people live and where they work, you can get commuting patterns. And I mentioned Jeff DeBellis. They have those shift share where people live and where people work is frequently something sometimes surprising. As Biogen in the RTP Wake County section, Mike McBriarty, their VP of Government Relations, says that they have employees that work at that installation from 27 different North Carolina counties. So,
Wow.
so you want to look at that. And even if we just had a slew of announcements in Danville, which is kind of a competitor, but also we share a labor shed with them. So a lot of those jobs with some of those announcements that were announced in Pittsylvania County, Virginia, will be filled by North Carolinians, and probably some North Carolina state graduates that live along that border, because the impetus might be, well, I can earn a good living at a good wage there. The same phenomenon on the reverse side of the equation. Can you use the metaphor about the same side of the coin? There are Virginians that come down into those markets to take some of those jobs. And if they have the skill sets and the academic competencies, they'll compete. So having that data analysis, we're all about data analysis and AI academies today to take that quantitative assessment and provide good data to those site selection consultants and those principals with HR to make assurances. The remote work phenomenon comes in because all that does is expand your labor shed. It expands your labor force. It doesn't detract from it. It adds to it. So it's an additive feature. And especially for those entities that might want to have that hybrid workforce. So we want to coordinate that, just like a lot of our North Carolina residents in the Northeast work in Southeastern Virginia. And you got the Charlotte phenomenon. We've got a lot of North Carolinians that live in the Charlotte metropolitan area. Patrick Lucid probably has UNC Charlotte grads that are working down, at the BMW facility in Greer and vice versa. So it's win-win. You're trying to make it win-win. We want the companies to come to North Carolina, but if they don't, you want to have really good technology with data science assessments to make sure that you can access that. And that's what Brent and Jason's study showed. And it's what the Duke Sanford School study actually showed as well. And I want to mention one other person, Mark Poole at the Department of Commerce. I think Susan Fleetwood may be on the call. Mark was wonderful along with Brent to help these students get an assessment, of how you look at measuring remote work. And they looked at those other states of Ohio, Texas, and Virginia to see if we're competitive. And we are, for all the things that Kenny's alluded to. We want to stay ahead of the game and emulate Utah's example.
Right. So I'm a local economic developer in a rural community. I'm not in a metropolitan area, and I'm recruiting a company, and I want to be able to give them a map that looks like the one that you put up on the screen. Who do they call?
Yeah, we'll start that because it's a never ending that sometimes our career development center folks don't want to hear from me because they're saying, can we work out and make it more current? But I think the combination of with Jeff and our alumni association, well, to give us the longitude and latitude of the site that's under investigation, and we don't have a current. The challenge is to keep it current, right? So, but we can tackle that for you. And our career development center folks, depending upon what you want to see too, it could be our Career Development Center team here at NC State are the most passionate people. We've got a university center, and then each college has a Career Development Center unit, and then the departments have units as well. And they're passionate about not only helping our kids secure their credentials while they're here with internships, externships, co-ops, and but also post-secondary. And that's what Anna Mangum does so well. Kenny mentioned extension. We want our kids to have those opportunities while they're here. So we'll try to tackle that data. I can't say that we've got it really current, but we're trying. We're moving along in that continuum.
Well, I'll give a shout out to Anna. Anna's helped us here in Moore County place some engineering students. So appreciate the work certainly that Anna's doing over there. Kenny, the next question I'll pass to you. This is from Paul. His question is, when you refer to resident recruitment, can you give some examples of what that might look like? I was intrigued by that. I'd never really thought of resident recruitment. So would love to hear what your some examples are there.
I helped develop a program when I worked in South Dakota where this image came from. It's called Marketing Hometown America. And it's, there's a lot of money spent in North Carolina on tourism and recruiting people to visit. Marketing Hometown America targets small communities that want to invite people not just to visit, but to come and live there. And it helps communities develop a change the mindset of that community, helps them talk about the positive aspects of their community. You know, the word around the coffee shops and the country stores a lot of times, oh, the community's going down, we're losing people. And well, when you go through this process of marketing Hometown America, it changes that conversation and brings out the positive aspects of living in that community. And then marketing can be developed to help those communities communicate the benefits of living there. So that's what resident recruitment sounds like. And I'll be glad to talk to anyone about that. Paul, I saw that your question in the Q&A. I would love to talk to a community to bring that to North Carolina. That's not been done in North Carolina yet. And I would love to be able to do that in a community in North Carolina. So I would love to talk with any community that would be willing to do that in North Carolina.
Great, thank you. And then another question we had in the Q&A is from Teresa, and she's,
Mhm.
took a look at those Indeed.com jobs that you were referring to
Right.
earlier in Franklin, and indicated that those are very specific, like for attorneys, insurance, that kind of those kinds of professions. What jobs, type of jobs do you
Right.
think that remote worker individuals should really be trained for? Are there
Right.
specific
Um,
jobs?
right. It's going to range. This program doesn't teach the skills needed for engineering job, but it helps that person be able to work in that remote work environment. So it can be translated over the different sectors of jobs that work in remote work or that have remote work. So um, it's not going to be a technical training as far as um, engineering skills or programming skills or that sort of skill building. It's going to be it's a program that teaches that connectivity and working on in a virtual team in a virtual environment using Slack and Trello and all these tools that you use for project management and team management, and it helps sort of do that part. So it's it spans the sectors, and it teaches more about the ability to be on a remote team.
Okay. It makes me kind of think of this conversation at the federal level, right?
Mhm.
About federal workers coming back to the office that
Oh
we're
yeah.
hearing about in the news. Is there an opportunity maybe for some resident recruitment of federal workers in your local community that might could go to
Mhm.
work for your employers? Kind of what are your thoughts on that, Tom and Kenny?
Go ahead, you start, Kenny, and I'll follow right up.
Well, with the change of a federal administration coming and the new Doge department, I've heard stories where part of the Doge initiative is going to bring workers back to offices. Um, that's going to cause a little bit of upheaval in the job market. I think some of those federal workers that have become accustomed to remote work or hybrid work, um, they might not want to go to DC. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That's just a fact. So that might be an opportunity for a industry or company to pick up a worker that's used to federal work, remote work. So that's an opportunity there. So we don't know. That's sort of the unknown that we're entering into right
Yeah,
now is how the appetite, how the climate's going to be for remote work.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
um,
Yeah, we're blessed with a plethora of very talented federal workers in the Research Triangle Park. For one, example, with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has a 1 million square foot research center, thanks to former Congressman David Price, and they're right next to the National Institute for Environmental Health Sciences. So back in the day when we were still waiting on IBM and other private sector companies to invest as they have in that wonderful world-class asset. So there we have thousands and thousands of individuals, not just with those federal agencies, but contract workers as well. There's 3,000 or 4,000 contract workers for EPA, for sake of example. And to Kenny's point, we don't lose very much, but about 4 or 5 years ago, under the first Trump administration, the National Institute of Food and Ag had an RFP that went out to 235 cities and 38 states, and it was to relocate NIFA and the Economic Research Service. And the finalists, the final four, were Purdue, Fort Wayne, Indiana, and 2 places in Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas, and RTP, North Carolina. And we felt that we should have won because the individuals did like living in Washington, D.C. They had been there for a long time. This was 800 or 900 jobs. And it wound up being put in Kansas City, where they had a 20% transfer rate. And it probably would have been 60, 70, 80% here, because it's always that here. People love North Carolina. It's a short hop. So there's an example that may give us more opportunities, because that may be happening more frequently for all the things Kenny alluded to. So we should stay tuned on that, because we've got a great quality of life here.
Yes, we do. And I think that that conversation, that marketing hometown America, that Kenny just mentioned earlier, in terms of, marketing your community as a place to live, right? That can also help you, that marketing effort can also help you recruit industry and business, because you can market that great quality of life that we have, not only in your local community, but also in the entire state of North Carolina. I got one final question. I just wanted to kind of talk about this juxtaposition between rural and metropolitan kind of areas of North Carolina, right? Tom, you alluded to this, office vacancy in metropolitan areas as it kind of being the flip side of the benefit of remote work in rural areas. Can the two of you talk a little bit more about what you might identify as other, opportunities or threats that economic developers might see, as it relates to what I think I hear you saying is an increasing trend towards remote work in the United States?
Yeah, it's a relatively new phenomenon that, according to Brent and Jason and scholars throughout the country, have studied, right? Like what necessitated that, and now that's post-COVID stayed with us, right? So you can revisit some really difficult times, like no-doc loans and Great Recession, and what prompted that and precipitated that. Things have to make sense in the marketplace. So if you can be cognizant of that phenomenon and say, what do we have here that can accommodate both? We want to revitalize those center cities that may have some high vacancy rates, right? We've got like Charlotte, and we have had some examples. I mean, if you look at Allstate Bandwidth, which was on Centennial's campus, and then moving out to a new center where it was 100% attendance, and then Centene, that was in St. Louis and that wanted to go to Charlotte. And so it has had an impact. There's no doubt about that. So in the future, and even the Apple delay of their development in their Wake County campus, a lot of that's been precipitated by this phenomenon of remote work. But now that the market seems to be correcting itself, interest rates have stabilized. There's a the election is behind us. I think 2025 will give us an opportunity to have some more assurance, and people don't like risk, right? So we may have a little bit more expectation. There's a little bit more certainty in the marketplace, and we can go forward on that basis. And I think Kenny said it really well, and you put it in perfect context, Natalie.
Thank you.
I would add to that. Part of the research that I didn't cover in these research studies that talk about remote work and that sort of thing is utilization of broadband in rural communities has the impact of being able to start small businesses. So those small businesses can grow and help people develop their business platform. And then those businesses, they grow, they're going to be looking for spaces in those rural communities. Yeah. So it's not where some of those forces are negative. There's also positive forces that come with it too. So
yeah, that's a great example. Now, real quick, Research Triangle Park is reinventing itself after having like a 60-year run, making it a live, work, play. And Scott Levitan and his team are doing a great job. we've got a more tabula rasa with Chatham Park and what Jim Goodnight, another great NC State grant, is doing, making that live, work, play, looking at energy efficiency and trying to accommodate that with the Disney development. So in Chatham County, and Jack's on the call here, it can relate to that. So looking at what people want and still maintaining that high quality. So RTP, Chatham Park, two great examples, and that should have derivative benefit for larger swaths of folks that may be using remote work as a theme as they enter either RTP or Chatham Park.
Well, those are great points. And I got to say, I learned a lot today. And I really, really appreciate both you, Kenny and Tom, being with us today. I think that takes care of all the questions that that have been posed. Definitely, again, want to say thank you both for all your insights. I think I heard you say you're going to share the slides with us. So I think our attendees will be able to access that data and information. And thank you for doing that. Before we go, I just want to remind all of our listeners on the call here to join us for some of our upcoming events. Next week, we have a webinar on December 17th, a strategy from higher ground, avoiding foreseeable surprises that limit growth. So I encourage you to register for that and be on the lookout for more information. Also, please save the date. We got a couple of events coming up. We have the Emerging Executives Forum that'll take place on January 22nd and 23rd in the Raleigh-Durham area. I attended last year. If you haven't attended, I highly recommend it. It's great to be with a lot of, I won't say younger or newer professionals in NCEDA, and it's great to be with them. Lots of energy there. And then we also have the Career Track program, which will be the following day on January 24th. And finally, here in my hometown, March 2nd to the 4th, we're going to have the 2025 Site Selectors Summit and Spring Conference at the Pinehurst Resort, and encourage you to attend that event as well. And be sure to check out our website and check your inbox for details in our biweekly newsletter. And I think that's it from us. And I want to say thank you again to our presenters. And I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. And hope everyone has happy holidays over the course of the next few weeks. So thank you guys. Appreciate you being here.